policy associate with the Southern Poverty Law Center and the SPLC Action Fund. We are here today with our community partners to support the efforts under the Gold Dome to pass tuition equity bills that would allow immigrant students to access affordable higher education. The first to speak is Emiko Soltis from the Freedom University.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Laura Emiko Soltis, and I serve as the director of Freedom University. Freedom U is an underground school for undocumented students in Georgia who've been banned from admission to this state's top public university. State tuition throughout the state. At Freedom University, we provide free college-level classes and help students apply to welcoming colleges across the country. Last year alone, 50% of our students won full scholarships to college, many to distant states like Connecticut and Vermont. And through our collective work, we successfully convinced Emory in 2015 to admit and provide full financial aid to undocumented students. And just this past year, we helped Oglethorpe University join the Dream.US initiative to admit and provide full scholarships to undocumented students. But while the private sector here in Georgia has stepped up to welcome the state's undocumented young scholars, Georgia's public universities are stuck in reverse. More than 23 states in the country allow undocumented students to qualify for in-state tuition, including states like Florida, Kentucky, and Texas. They do this because they recognize that in-state tuition allows a state to capitalize on its investment of every student's K-12 public education, as required under federal law. They do this because they recognize that making higher education less accessible to their state's undocumented students is economically stupid. Requiring out-of-state tuition that most undocumented families cannot afford effectively sends thousands of talented, multilingual, hardworking young people educated here in this state to another state, where they will receive a quality higher education in another state, make more money in another state, and contribute higher taxes in another state. The motto of the University System of Georgia is to create a more educated Georgia. But without in-state tuition, we are sending our state's talented undocumented students elsewhere. A more accurate motto for Georgia, then, is creating a more educated Connecticut, or perhaps a more educated Vermont. But jokes aside, I'm here today to speak as a citizen, and perhaps as the only citizen in the country who teaches in a classroom where every student is undocumented. I have a duty to share what I have seen and what I have learned in my classroom. In my classroom, I have students whose undocumented fathers were recruited to Atlanta to build the roads and stadiums to help this city prepare for the 1996 Olympics. Many of my students came to Georgia as children to reunite with their families. In-state tuition honors the contributions of these families to our state because they are Georgians too. In my classroom, I have a talented football player who was recently recruited by the University of Georgia football team, but just recently found out that he is barred from admission and in-state tuition because of his immigration status. He's now considering studying and playing football at Harvard and Georgetown. Rescinding Board of Regents Policy 416 and granting in-state tuition here in the Georgia legislature would keep him here. Go Dogs. In my classroom, I have students with terrible GPAs. They quit trying in high school when they realized they were barred from admission and in-state tuition here in Georgia. Young people shouldn't have to be valedictorians or exceptional students just to have the opportunity to go to college. In-state tuition makes that possible. In my classroom, I have helped my students and their parents pay their taxes. Undocumented immigrants in Georgia contribute an estimated $352 million annually in state taxes. They are funding the universities they are barred from attending, and without the legal right to vote, they are experiencing taxation without representation. In-state tuition would balance the scales of justice. In my classroom, I have students who have been deeply traumatized by family separations and deportations in a country that purports to uphold family values. I have students who have contemplated or attempted suicide because of their sense of helplessness in this state. In-state tuition would give them hope. And in my classroom, I see undocumented young people who we as Americans honestly don't deserve. We don't deserve them. I see young people who are still kind and generous in a country that has denied their very humanity. In-state tuition is literally the very least we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up to speak is one of our dreamers, Saida Bano.
Good afternoon. My name is Sayeda, and I'm a college student here in the state of Georgia. I'm attending one of the few colleges I had access to when I was considering which schools I would attend. Like thousands of other DACA recipients in the state of Georgia, I spent much of my senior year wondering if I would be able to attend school, and if I did, how I would be able to afford it. This is not unique to my story. This is the reality for many undocumented and Dreamer students across the state. Making college more affordable to Dreamers and immigrant students will not only enhance the lives of Dreamers, students, and immigrants, but will also decrease brain drain, as I watch a lot of my friends leave the state of Georgia to attend other universities in different states that are more friendly to the immigrant populations. As a senior graduating from college in just a few short months, when I reflect back on the time I've spent in college, I've realized that the majority of my time was spent working. While pursuing a double major, I continued working over 50 hours across several different jobs because my goal was to achieve a college education, and the reality of it was I had to be able to afford it. If in-state tuition was available for me, not only would the colleges I considered initially have been different, but the way I spent the rest of my college career would have also been different. The story, again, is not just mine, rather the reality for Dreamers across the state who are trying to pursue their human right to an education while also making sure that they're able to afford that education. Making tuition affordable will allow for students like me, who always dreamed of achieving a college degree, to give back to the state I've called home for 20 years, to have more access to these universities, and to give back to the very communities we know as home. I'm hopeful that my story, along with the others here today, will encourage our representatives to support in-state tuition for Dreamer and immigrant students to protect the safety of the students, and also making sure that we're not losing any more of the best and brightest students to other states. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Next up, we're going to have Minority Leader Bob Trammell, one of the authors of HB 896, one of the in-state tuition bills.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I don't know that I can say it any more plainly or any more poignantly than the people who have already spoken at this press conference. What I can say is that House Bill 896 is an issue of fairness. It is an issue of trying to put together good public policy for Georgia, just like 23 other states in the country have, to retain talent here in Georgia. For high school students who graduate from Georgia high schools, to have the doors for higher education open for them with the opportunity to pursue their education by paying in-state tuition, as opposed to being kept out of Georgia's path to higher education by being forced to pay out-of-state tuition, which is cost prohibitive for most students. Thank you for being here. It is very heartening to see the attention that this issue is getting this legislative session. We must continue to press forward, and the conversations that happen in this Capitol around this issue of fairness in attempting to retain talent in Georgia will continue, but our time is short as we approach crossover day. So I would urge to contact your representatives and tell them that you want a hearing and a vote for this to move forward so that we can get this policy implemented in Georgia. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to hear from another dreamer, Marisol Estrada.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Marisol Estrada, and I am a dreamer who grew up here in Georgia. Georgia is home, and I arrived here when I was 5 years old. My mother brought me into the United States for an opportunity at a better life, to also escape violence, and for a better future for myself and for my family. Growing up, I never would have thought that being undocumented would have the implications that it has to this day. I remember being in high school and wanting to apply for a job to work at my local Sonic or the local Kroger bagging groceries. But in order to do that, I needed a social security number, which I thought that I had. Unfortunately, when I asked my mom for my social security number, my mom told me that it did not exist. And I couldn't believe that because when I was in school, I was taking all of these standardized tests where I had to fill in a social security number. And I would raise my hand and ask my teacher for my social security number, and they would give it to me. And so to find out that the number I was being given my whole life is just a student ID number really crushed me. And to find out that because of that 9-digit number, I wasn't going to have a level playing field as all of my peers really put me into a hole of depression. I called the suicide hotline. I did not see myself succeeding in this country at all. Thankfully, I enrolled in something called the International Baccalaureate Program. And for me, that was going to allow me to go anywhere in the world to further my education. And so thankfully, I had a high school counselor come up to me, and she told me that she knew my secret. Because back in the day, I did not share my status with anybody. Back in the day, I would have nightmares that ICE would come into my classroom and ICE would take me and put me into deportation proceedings. That was my nightmare, but it was also my reality. And to have my counselor come up to me, tell me that she knows my secret and that she is going to help me find a way to get to college made a huge difference in my life. And thankfully, out of a miracle, well, not really a miracle because undocumented people have been fighting for a pathway to citizenship for a very long time, but Obama introduced the DACA program. And the DACA program gave me the 9-digit number I needed to be able to start working. It gave me the 9-digit number in the work permit in order to have a driver's license here in Georgia. But unfortunately, what it did not do was allow me to further my education. The Supreme Court of the United States ruled on a case called Plyler versus Doe that allows for undocumented students to be able to attend elementary school, anything K through 12, and that's exactly what I did. However, there is nothing in Georgia that allows undocumented people to go to higher institutions of education, and the schools that we are allowed to attend, we have to pay out-of-state tuition. I graduated early from Armstrong State University because I took as many courses as possible, and I worked more than 5 jobs a semester in order to make ends meet. I applied endlessly to scholarships, and when my teachers found out that still was not enough, they created a scholarship for me called the Marisol Scholarship, and I was able to graduate thanks to them. And not every DACA recipient in Georgia is as lucky as I am, and I'm very aware that I was put in a very good position with people to support me. But I am not alone. There's more than 21,000 DACA recipients, and there's even thousands more of students that do qualify for DACA, but currently are unable to apply for the program. So I urge everyone in the legislature, every constituent in the state of Georgia, to ask their representative to make higher education equitable. We're not asking for a free ride, we're asking for a level playing field. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story as well. We're going to hear now from Representative Brenda Lopez, one of the sponsors of HB 896.
Thank you and good afternoon for being here. As Leader Trammell has said, there's not much that I can add that the stories of the individuals that are most directly affected have already provided. I will say that I do, in a sense, still feel this as a personal story because I grew up with many peers, classmates of mine that I quite frankly will say were probably a lot hardworking, were smarter than I was. But the difference between me and them was that after 12 years of being undocumented myself, I was able, through my father applying through the Ronald Reagan Amnesty Program, eventually be able to process through his petition. Despite the fact that it took 12 years, I got finally approved for a green card at my 17 years of age when I was actually a junior. Had it not been just for the luck of straw that it would have lasted a year longer of wait, I would have been exactly in the same situation. So I also came when I was 5 years old to the state of Georgia to reunite with my father here. And the difference between someone that is 5 years old that eventually was able to go to college, pay in state tuition, go to law school, and have the honor to represent our state here in the Capitol has, as many people have already said, the difference has been a 9-digit number. And so, of course, I take it very personal to know that there were young folks with me that were not able to continue their dreams precisely for that number. And so I do ask that we do advocate, because this bill and the bills that we have seen forward in the Capitol are not moving forward unless we're actively pushing our representatives and our senators when it goes to the Senate floor to work on this bill. What that means is we do have to call and email, particularly the members right now of the Higher Education Committee, to ensure that they make a hearing and allow for a vote on this bill to move forward. We also need you to come to the Capitol every legislative session that you can and talk directly to your representatives, to your senators, because it is that community push, it is that constituency push, including for those that are not yet U.S. citizens. I urge you to also come and particularly share your personal stories, because it is that direct personal contact that, quite frankly, has allowed us to be here today and to have multiple in-state tuition bills, precisely because slowly through these personal stories, through this personal relationship that we're building, we are understanding that fundamentally this issue, this bill, is most definitely an important economic and work development bill for the state of Georgia, but ultimately it is, as has been said, an issue of equity and an issue of fairness. So thank you for being here, and please help us by calling and emailing and being here present at the Capitol talking to your representatives and senators.
Thank you. Up next is Glory Kilanko from Women Watch Africa.
Greetings. My name is Glory Afi Kilanko. I'm the founder and CEO for Women Watch Africa. Women Watch Africa provides comprehensive social adjustment services to African refugees and immigrants in the state of Georgia. And we work for the elimination of all forms of discrimination, including educational discrimination. We currently serve 23 African nations. I want to join all those who have spoken before me to say this bill for equitable education tuition is long overdue. It is coming, though, at the right time, but at the same time, it's something that we are at this time supposed to be saying thanks that it did happen. Women Watch Africa has provided service to a number of undocumented immigrants who are in this country, who were forced to this country as a result of cultural violence. I'm sure this will be new to a number of you, that women are denied education in their home countries. In most of the third world countries, women are denied education because education is the preserve of the male child. And so when some of these women now flee from such cultural violence to come to seek safety in the United States, they are barred from participating in the educational system because they are undocumented. This bill being passed will wipe tears from the eyes of majority. It will be a dream come true for a woman who was denied and treated as second-class citizen in her own home country to say she has also attained the American dream. I want to share with you a story of a woman that took Women Watch Africa 7.5 years to adjudicate before she was granted asylum. This woman ran into this country because she was forced into early child marriage. And then she ended up having 3 female children. And she was told by her husband's family that she has brought animals to the family. How come she's sitting down in their house and every day being fed and yet she cannot produce a child. What does that tell us? That all 3 female children are still not recognized as human beings. So, through the help of missionaries, she was brought into the United States. Women Watch Africa and the Catholic Charities worked together to be able to adjudicate her case. Her case was initially denied because it was strange in the United States for the judge to hear that somebody with 3 children is still deemed to not have had a child. It took that long. The good story is, this lady vowed that because she was denied education, because she was female, she is not going to allow the same to happen to her 3 female children. Today, I share with you that she is a successful nurse at Grady, and her 3 children are doing well. And this was because she stood to fight that. There are many more like her who are out there. There are many more of our immigrant young girls who have been forced into becoming early mothers, who will not be able to leave Georgia to go to other states to seek education because it will lead to separation of the children that they've been forced to have at a tender age. And they would want to be close to those children to protect them so they don't suffer the same kind of violence that they have experienced. So I'm glad to see everyone in the room. I need to ask each and every one as you leave here, let one tell one. Let each of us tell each person as we leave here about the value of this bill, about the importance of this bill, about the lives that will be saved, about the lives that will be changed when this bill sees the light of day. I thank all of those who are proposing this bill, and like I said, it's long overdue. We're looking forward to a day when we would all have cause to celebrate our gathering here today. Thanks, and we hope that we would be able to say we called for it, and today we have equity in our educational system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Giovanni Serrano from GLAR.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Giovanni Serrano, and I'm a community organizer with the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights, also known as GLAR. As a resident of Georgia, I can tell you that undocumented students have been fighting for years for the right to receive equal access to higher education in the state of Georgia, a right under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states, technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. However, the state of Georgia has failed its students when the legislature and the Board of Regents created policies that deny undocumented students the right to a higher education. Such efforts has a long history in the segregation of students, as I am reminded of when the state of Georgia banned African Americans from enrolling in its colleges in the 1960s. The legislature knows that there are a lack of professionals in Georgia, and they still refuse to allow students to higher education to undocumented students. They deny us the benefits of staying and building in our own home. Instead, the state has forced many of us to leave to find better opportunities, where our talent and our ability to contribute to society are recognized. My sister grew in Georgia. She was an intern at Georgia State. During high school, I conducted research on superconductors. It was then incredibly sad for me that as a student working on this project, she was banned from attending Georgia Tech. She was forced to leave the state and go to college far away from home to pursue her dream of becoming a math professor. As for myself, I too left Georgia to continue my education at Tuchel College, where I received a full ride scholarship and was able to earn a bachelor's degree in biology. And soon, we'll be pursuing a PhD in public health. After graduation, I decided to come back to my home state, but many of my friends have not. Georgia is missing in the great contributions they are making in another state. Despite Georgia denying us the right to an education, we still succeed. But in the end, the one that is missing out on great professionals is the state of Georgia. My friends and I are successful, with many enrolled in medical school, nursing school, law school, among others. But I also know that many young people who have given up their dreams because of these obstacles. They now know the right to higher education weakens their workforce, establishes human potential, and fails to nurture relationships with students who grew up in Georgia. That is a great need for inclusion, to give undocumented students the right to equal access to higher education. But we should not settle for any proposal because many of us have been fighting for years. We need a proposal that is fair and dignified for all young people. GLAR supports House Bill 896 because it provides for all opportunities to a larger pool of students to access, such as allowing students with GED access to in-state tuition. And it doesn't limit qualifications by age or time of arrival to the U.S. We applaud the efforts to expand education to all of our community. However, in the search for political victories, we will not sacrifice the dignity of our students. We will fight for our community, not only to benefit a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Brian Nunez from Georgia Shift.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Brian Núñez y yo trabajo con Georgia Shift y estoy aquí para básicamente hablar en español para que nuestra comunidad inmigrante de Georgia sepa y tenga acceso a lo que estamos diciendo aquí. Primero, definitivamente queremos dejarles saber que hemos hablado con la comunidad inmigrante y varias organizaciones que trabajan ahí y los Dreamers, y ellos apoyan a las diferentes leyes y diferentes propuestas que se han hecho este año específicamente para que haga matrícula estatal para los estudiantes Dreamers de aquí del estado. Ahora mismo los tres documentos que se han introducido en la Cámara de Representantes aquí de Georgia tratan de que tengan más acceso a las universidades de aquí de Georgia, especialmente para esos muchachos que que llaman a ese estado Georgia su hogar. Definitivamente necesitamos hacer lo más que podamos para que esas barreras ya sean eliminadas. Ahora mismo, la mejor de las tres propuestas es la propuesta 896, porque además de que es la que es más expansiva, también protege la privacidad, que es lo más importante de los estudiantes que aplican por la matrícula estatal. También no tiene límite de la edad cuando llegan estos niños aquí a los Estados Unidos. Y segundo, y finalmente, no le da un límite a la edad cuando estos niños aplican a las universidades, que eso es lo desafortunado de los otros bills, y por eso le pedimos que apoyen al 896. Ya es tiempo de que digamos que no a estos básicamente a estas barreras que vemos de muchos estudiantes que son muchachos que son estrellas, y estas barreras básicamente paran a de que ellos brillen en su propio estado. Ya vemos mucho que se van a otros estados y dicen, oh, claro, si el estado que ellos crecen le dicen, no, tú no tienes el derecho de estudiar. Imagínate eso. Definitivamente queremos que ustedes todos, y se lo digo yo, con toda fe, que por favor llamen y apoyen llamen a sus representantes, porque necesitamos pasar, ya es tiempo, apóyennos, que estos estudiantes necesitan brillar en sus propios estados. Gracias.
Thank you, Brian. Our final speaker today is Swati Sundaram from Advancing Justice Atlanta.
Hi everyone, my name is Swati Sundaram and I'm the Policy Manager at Asian Americans Advancing Justice, and we believe in in-state tuition for all. Asian Americans Advancing Justice is the first nonprofit legal advocacy organization dedicated to protecting the civil rights of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian communities in Georgia and the Southeast. I'm here in support of tuition equity. In our state, there are over 51,000 undocumented youth, of which over 14% are Asian American. Many members of our communities are DACA recipients or dreamers who were brought here as children. They're embedded in our communities, want to remain with their families, and continue to contribute to our economies. And yet, they face barriers in obtaining a higher education and are charged unfair tuition rates solely because of their immigration status. Moreover, tuition inequity isn't costly just to our communities. It's costly to our economies in so many ways. According to the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, Georgia is missing out on about $10 million in tax revenue per year by disqualifying academically eligible Georgians from discounted in-state tuition rates. At least 20 states have extended in-state tuition for undocumented students. Representatives Lopez and Trammell have started an important discussion here in our Georgia State Legislature on tuition equity with HB 896. We at Advancing Justice also acknowledge two other bills recently introduced in the fight for tuition equity, one bipartisan, HB 997, and one Republican-led, HB 920, underscoring that this issue is not partisan and a priority for the state of Georgia. Tuition equity is integral to our communities, economies, and we owe it to our youth. Thank you. At this time, our organizations would also like to condemn 287G, a program that forces local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law. It's dangerous for our communities, increases family separation, and community distrust of police, and it's costly to our local and state governments. In 2019 alone, it cost taxpayers over $2 million. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for being with us today. That concludes our press conference. Please go out and speak to all of your representatives, and let's get some in-state tuition for migrant children. Thank you.
Thank you.